Maybe don't know.
This time, next time to build. This 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 time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 178 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I am not going to dilly-dally around here for very long today because it's ridiculously busy over here. Lana will be here soon to get started working. She's been a taskmaster these last couple of weeks, so I need to be on my A game and ready to work when she shows up. But I do have a couple of things I want to tell you about. Number one, this Saturday is Rocktoberfest. That's the annual fundraising event for the Red River Gorge Climbers Coalition. I've emceed that event since the very beginning. This year it's virtual. I'm still involved in a couple of ways. And this event is the main big fundraiser for the coalition. It's how they've purchased these giant tracts of land that they've given to the community to keep access open for climbing. And I think that's an incredibly important venture, especially with the popularity of the Red River Gorge, to be able to spread people out. Huge for the land itself. So if you can support Red River Gorge Climbers Coalition and Rocktoberfest, you can find a link to register right there in your show notes, in your pocket supercomputers. And I will be having a conversation with Ashima Shiraishi. I will also be running a climbing trivia event along with Lana. There will be prizes for the climbing trivia. So get in there and get registered. All right, on to the next. Time is running out here. Lana's on her way, I'm sure. That freaks me out a little bit. All right, today's guest is a legend in this game. That's not even debatable. Paul Piana is also someone who welcomed me into this lander community 8 or 9 years ago in a really warm way. And Paul was one of my heroes when I was in my formative years of climbing. I'm air quoting here because I'm still formative. And I've been very privileged over the years to be able to call Paul a friend, to be able to sit down and have conversations just like this one. And this one is especially important for me. You'll hear in the interview that Paul is a little worried about starting to lose his memories. And I feel like it's part of my duty to collect and preserve these memories. So I'm very proud to have this conversation on record for all of you. And this came about in a really interesting way. I was in the building that used to house Paul and Todd's Woody here in Lander, where they trained. And I noticed that there were boxes and boxes and boxes of these Sierra Club books stacked up in the corner. And I asked Amy Skinner about them, and she told me that at a time when Paul was in a bit of a financial situation years and years ago, she helped him out by purchasing every copy of his book that he had available. And his book is published by the Sierra Club Books in 1997, called Big Walls: Breakthroughs on the Free Climbing Frontier. It's a large format, hardcover, full color book with photographs by a who's who of climbing photographers at the time: Galen Rowell, Bill Hatcher, Beth Wald, a foreword by Royal Robbins, and it details the planning and the climbing of these big objectives that Todd and Paul dreamt of and used to push our understanding and our belief in free climbing on big walls forward. His writing is actually one of the things that really drew me to Todd and Paul as people that I looked up to when I was coming up in climbing. And we have those books. We have a limited number of those books. We had Paul sign them while Paul was here in town, and we have those for sale up on the website right now at powercompanyclimbing.com/Paul-Piana. Go get those now. Like I said, limited number of those signed copies. And we are taking none of the proceeds from this. It will be split between helping Amy Skinner recoup some of her cost as well as helping out the Todd Skinner Legacy Fund. And that's something that Amy started here in Lander. It's a scholarship program that anyone can apply for. You can find info in the show notes. And it's to provide expedition support, cultural and educational support, and publication and film support to the scholarship winners. And like I said, you can find out more information right there in your show notes. There is a link in your pocket supercomputer. So go check that out. Go get the book. There's a limited number, and I would guess these are going to go pretty damn quickly. All right. Paul and I at my house, we start this conversation talking about his recent retirement. Let's get into it.
My dad, for some reason, gave me a briefcase. So here I was in 6th and 7th grade carrying a briefcase with my climbing books in it. Pretty nice.
Yeah, no doubt.
It was a nice big chunk of money to pay off stuff, you know.
Now you can get out into the needles more. And
well, I
climb more.
can. Yeah.
Is that part of the plan? Are you going to get out climbing more?
Yeah, I mean, not as much as I used to.
Sure.
And I'm not really looking to do things hard. I just, because I'm in not very good shape, and I'm very arthritic. And all sorts of geezer infirmities.
Well, and you're climbing in the same area now that you learned to climb in, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things I want to talk to you about is two of the things, actually, big dreams and partnerships, and how those two things kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And when you started, you had these mentors that made a big difference in your climbing life. Ren Fenton and Paul Mule, was that his name?
Well, he was later.
Okay.
But I had, there were some older climbers, older to me when I was 12 and 14.
Yeah.
There was a guy named Charlie Bear that was a local. And these guys would get together there was occasionally outing clubs at the School of Mines or Black Hills State. And there would be groups of people that Charlie and this guy named Doc Van Huvelen, who was ancient. He was probably in his late 50s then. But they would gather these students and go out and climb. And then, they were doing just easy climbs,
Sure.
summit bagging, having fun.
Yeah.
And climbing harder than I was by a long shot, because I didn't know what to do until Ren came. I found him and pestered him enough.
Yeah.
And then every August, this was later, but Bob Camps and Mark Powell and Dave Rarick would come, and Goldstone from the East.
Right.
And mostly I just kind of watched and listened, because they kind of didn't come there to drag a little kid around,
Mm-hmm.
But it was really neat to see what they did and how they did it. It was pretty cool.
When you were like first pestering Ren and him taking you under his wing, was he at that time interested in difficulty? Was he trying to climb harder and harder things, or was it purely I just want to go out and have these adventures?
I think at that point, He wasn't very old then, but he was already really a bad alcoholic. And he loved to climb, but he wasn't trying to do new routes or do harder climbs.
Right.
He enjoyed doing some of the climbs he pioneered, and then other ones and I think he would have preferred a better partner, because I remember once he was showing me how to actually tie in with the climber's knots,
Right.
not just square knots and stuff,
Right.
But the things he taught me probably saved me a couple of times.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's one of the big values of mentorship that, we tend to overlook now, because there's so much information out there about here's how you do this safely. Here's, you can Google it and find anything now. So that passed down knowledge doesn't happen in the same way that it used to.
Yeah. And it was all pitons. There were
Right.
and one day Ren had ordered from RAI, I think, and they came, just those ancient nuts that you threaded. They didn't, it was just like you could put 5 or 50
Right.
of them on a sling.
They're just like aluminum wedges with holes in them. Yeah.
And I thought, you got to be kidding. That's not going to hold. But I don't know that he or I ever fell on one, but I just went, oh God, this isn't going to sell, And now, geez, you never see pitons used very much. In the needles you do if you're doing first ascents, but that's just because of the nature of the rock.
Sure.
God, ridiculous. We used to go out and like, wow, look at that. There's a piton up there. And we'd climb the thing just to get the pitons.
Yeah. Yeah, I was out hunting around an area we've been bouldering in for a few years now, and came across this kind of steep wall, maybe 40 to 60 feet tall. And it's got all these big horizontal cracks running through it. And sure enough, there's a couple of pitons.
Really?
Up on the wall. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Super interesting to see that, climbers have been searching this stuff out. And you were just showing us photos on your phone of this limestone cliff that you found. And, if you scroll through my phone, it looks exactly the same. There's just photos of random rocks that I come across and I have to take a photo of, so there's just this innate love that we have for exploration. And
yeah, that was really, I was delighted. Deb could care less.
Exactly. Yeah.
We were just having a picnic with the puppies, and it was just a sunny, cool day, but it was really pretty. And in here I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
When did this come? It's like you're expecting like a plant that comes out of the soil
Right.
overnight, it's like, wow.
This just grew here.
Yeah. And you look at that and you think, this is just as good as Spearfish Canyon. Man.
Yeah.
So I've told a couple people about it, but I haven't told them where it is yet.
Yeah. Keep it secret.
Yeah.
That's a good plan.
Yeah, and I'm not fit enough, frankly, to climb on that kind of rock or here. It'd be devastating because I have no jip. But geez, you still have to go out there and do a little reconning.
Yeah, you have to. So in your book, Big Walls, I read about you having a photo of Royal Robbins, I think in your dorm room. And, this ties into this whole having these mentors, watching these people have these adventures, go on these big grand expeditions. And that photo of Royal that you had on your dorm room wall, it reminded me of something that Galen Rowell used to say about having phantom mentors, people that were your mentors from afar that maybe you hadn't even met at that point, and Galen Rowell was one of my phantom mentors. And I loved everything he did, photography and adventure wise. And you and Todd were phantom mentors for me, reading all these things in Ohio and, kind of hitching my dreams onto onto what you and Todd were doing and Galen was doing, and until that picked up enough steam that my own dreams could start to develop on their own, you know? And I think it's so important to have those people to hitch your thoughts and ideas and dreams onto, you know. Was Royal that way for you? Is that why that photo showed up? I think you said the photo was of him on Half Dome.
Yeah, I had that kind of phantom mentors.
Yeah.
There were only climbers really in the Black Hills Needles in August.
Right.
And then there'd be some college kids from Black Hills. But the thing that really got me was my dad had business often in Denver, and sometimes he'd take the family down. And there was a motel with a nice pool and good place for kids.
Yeah.
And I went down, and I'd already become a climber,
right,
which means I probably haven't climbed anything even as 5.0 at that time, because I didn't even know what that meant. Anyway, I pestered him to take me to a mountain climbing store.
Right.
And we went to Boulder and went to Jerry Mountain Sports. And it was kind of like Holly Bar. They made down jackets, sleeping bags, and they even had carabiners made with their name on it, and pitons. And so I went down there, and I probably had $15 or something. And I went down, and it was really difficult I didn't get any hard iron because it was too expensive. But I bought some, 50-cent pitons of different shapes and a couple carabiners. Jerry Mountain Sports carabiners. But what really did it, more important than, and I didn't have a rope yet either. I'd use Wren's or literally, just like the old timers said, hemp piece of rope.
Yep.
And it was about a 3/8 inch laid rope.
Yep. Whatever you could get your hands on.
I took it
much.
through a pulley. I took the pulley apart to have the rope, and it was about 35 feet long. Anyway, what really inspired me was I bought the first ascent, which was 1967, and a couple books. And one was, I still have it, it's called Rock Climbers in Action in Snowdonia. And I got that, and I think Christian Bonington's I Chose to Climb, and then this Ascent magazine. And those pictures and stories jacked me up beyond any climb I could have done for decades, because they'd, do whatever they could when they'd be able to take that one day a week off to go climbing, and they'd leave their wives and their family and everything and get 2 people on a motor scooter and go. And the climbs they did were pretty damn impressive.
Yeah.
And the philosophy of that, I chose to climb, and those black and white pictures of these people way out, and I thought, wow. And the black and white photos reminded me of the Needles, because it's often quite black and white there.
Yeah.
And those guys were my real heroes. And Royal was kind of really not secondary, but those Brits, really, those photos, they were the rock climbers, I think, really the first. They were really psyched because they had these little ratty cliffs. Yeah. And
they were very interested in difficulty, doing things that were harder, being the first to do something.
And on wanting to, and Royal fit in with the one-upmanship,
Yeah.
And even, more, I want to say the other climbers I met later that, like Bob Camps and Mark Powell and those guys, and they were more subtle in their criticism, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was really fun. It was just fun to hear that. And it was good times. But then they would go home, and you
Right.
wouldn't see them until the next August.
Do you remember a moment or a time or some sort of linchpin that allowed you to start thinking, oh, I can do the things that they do, that I'm ready for that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Well, Ren would take me climbing, and I could always get up everything he led.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that my Keds didn't work very well, which are like tennis shoes.
Right.
But in 7th grade, when wrestling started, you could get Keds brand I have
Like
trouble.
wrestling shoes?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
So with
and
like
they were
the
pretty good.
super soft sole,
They look kind of
know,
like EBs.
not a whole lot of structure, right? Yeah.
But they work pretty well.
Yeah.
And I could follow whatever he was willing to lead at that time. And that was really fun, but I had no idea what a grade was, like at 5.8, 5 a million.
Right.
And the Brits, you know, we called things severe and hard severe. My
Right,
little buddies
sure.
and I, that and we didn't even know what we were saying.
Because that's what you're reading about.
Yeah, and we just assumed that it was. We could admit to climbing severe, but not hard severe.
Right.
But we didn't know what it meant.
Exactly.
And I still have those books. They're pretty worn out. I had my dad, for some reason, gave me a briefcase. So here I was in 6th and 7th
Carrying
grade
your
carrying a
books
briefcase with my climbing books in it.
Yeah. You knew it was going to become a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
You have
And
to
it's
protect
still,
these.
it's still just thinking about doing certain things inspires me. And I think back on those old books, you know, I read about my adventures. And then I'd make believe I was doing those climbs, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so important for people to document those adventures and those big dreams, whether it's success or failure on those big adventures. It's so important to have that documentation and to allow someone to read that and then build their own adventures on top of it, you know, and that's something I think has gone the same way of mentorship that's sort of disappearing, you know, and it's so easy to just put out a video of your recent adventure and not really have to think deeply about it in order to write a story about it that, you know, is going to convey that emotion, that feeling, that adventure to the people reading it and, you know, give them this bigger dream, you know? So, and I appreciate you taking all the time to write out your adventures, your dreams, you know, and in articles and books, and because it allows other people to dream on top of that.
Well, in fact, I've been looking forward to being retired because I thought there are a lot of stories I haven't told, and I'd like to tell those stories before my mind goes. I actually have some kind of problem. I can't remember what it's called, but it's kind of like senility. It's a little coming on a little early, but it's kind of scary.
I bet.
So if I'm halting, that's because I can't find the word.
Yeah.
So, but I would like to tell some of the stories, big and small, before, you know, similar to that.
Right.
These short stories, really.
Yeah.
Except they are mostly true.
Mostly. And that's important that they're only mostly true, you know? And I'm glad you are thinking about putting those things out there, because I think, like I said, those adventures and those written stories mean so much for the imagination, for the, you know, the climber who's just starting to dream on their own and starting to understand, oh, I've been reading about these mythical heroes and maybe I can do the same things that they did. You know, when I was beginning to crack climb and, you know, really digging into that world, it was you and Todd, it was Huden and Jones, you know, Kalkenbacker, you know, my partners and I would pretend that we were those people when we were out adventuring.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, even some of those people were younger than me, but I still pretended to be them because they were so damn good.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd see just a picture of them doing something. Wow, that's the way it looks is what I want to feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And hopefully it would be mastery, not terror.
Yeah.
But often it was terror.
Yeah. With a brief moment of mastery, and that's when the photos snapped.
Yeah. Yeah. You look at and then the next day you go out climbing and there's no mastery.
Yeah.
That'd be funny. Oh.
Yeah.
But it was cool, and I still do that. I see these young guys like Chris Hirsch. Gee, Manise. They're so good.
Yeah.
You know, and it probably happens to every micro generation.
Absolutely.
You know? And you're just going, holy cow. And you know, why we couldn't climb harder early, I don't know. We didn't believe, I think.
Yeah. Well, you know, Chris Hirsch has all of these, you know, training grounds already created for him. You know, all these people have done these 5'11s, 5'12s, 5'13s, and he can build off of those into something bigger, you know, and that's the necessity of what you guys, what Kalkenbacker, what, you know, Huden and Jones did. When you met Todd, you met him at UW, right?
Yes.
Did he have the same dreams, or was he kind of just learning what that was all about?
Well, he had, in a way, I don't think he was thinking of becoming a great rock climber. It was fun.
Yeah.
But his dad and his uncle Courtney
Right.
were really influential. Courtney having gone to winter over the South Pole a number of times.
Yeah.
And they'd done climbing, and his dad was a survival instructor during World War II. And, well, actually, I think just right after that, but definitely the Korean War. And just all of those adventures. And they were in the mountains. And there was a guy, Holly could tell you the name of this guy. I can't think of it now, but he was one of the very last true mountain men. You know, he wore skins and lived in the mountains always.
Right.
And he had these little cabins built all over. And they were just lean-tos, essentially. And Clem, their granddad, would give Bob to this trapper and say, well, just take the boy for the season and let him learn.
Yeah.
He didn't say teach him. He said let him learn.
Right.
And that's one way they became such good guides up there, is because Bob knew and then Courtney, and, you know, and they taught survival, you know, in the military. And they just had, you know, they weren't saying, oh, gee, I wish we could be the first to climb the nose. They weren't so interested in that, but they did do this, I want to say, second or third ascent of Shiprock.
Oh, wow.
By
I didn't know
route.
that.
Yeah, a partial new route.
Yeah.
It just, you know, really cool stuff.
Yeah. So Todd had the adventure already built in.
Yeah, yeah. And you can imagine having the whole Wind Rivers when you're a kid.
Right.
You know. Of course, they had to chop wood, and one of the jobs that Todd didn't like, have you ever been to their camp?
I haven't.
Well, they had these, you know, an outhouse, but they had like 4 holers,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And Todd's job was to make sure they were stocked with necessities and
Yeah.
if they were clean. And his job was to every day take some slurry of lye and
Around the rings.
wash the rings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he forgot to get some fresh water to flush all that off. And it wasn't like 30 seconds. He went over here to get a bucket. And his Uncle Monty, who was really grouchy, came in and sat there. And he took a while, reading or something. And then it started to burn and blister, And, Todd Skinner. And then he said a lot of other different kind of words. Oh, I think that was one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, well, just fitting that it happened to the grouchy uncle. Too,
yeah,
so.
yeah. Anyway, he's a really nice guy, but he just had a sour persona, but he was a really good guy. He was just, if he was mad, he wasn't really good.
Yeah, you need to have those, especially in a family full of big personalities. You got to have the grouchy one. So Vita Vu is what you guys had, which isn't exactly the Winds. There's nothing big in Vita Vu. Is that where you and Todd really started, or you met Todd there, but did the two of you really start focusing on difficulty at that point? Because, Vita Vu's pretty small even by one pitch standards.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was new roots more than anything. And when I was at school the first time, I had probably the hardest thing I climbed there was fall wall. And I noticed Spider God, the direct start essentially to fall wall. And I dreamed about that for 4 years.
Yeah.
And there's a friend of mine, Doug Cairns. He was a really good climber, probably still is. I just haven't seen him forever. And he was doing some hard climbs there. And, of course, the Coloradans were. Anyway, I thought about that for 4 years. And I remember coming back on leave and going climbing with Doug. And I confided my dream of sorts to do this climb. And he said, well, it'll be there for you, And I came back, and as soon as the weather got good, a climbing buddy from Newcastle, Kelly Thorpe, he liked to climb, but it didn't matter if he actually did. He just loved to go out and hike and climb. He was a perfect belayer. And so I went out and climbed Spider God. And that was really a kind of a turning point because it was pretty hard slab, and I hadn't been climbing much. And so it was kind of an eye opener. I thought, well, gee, why don't I just do more of this?
Yeah.
Because like Royal wrote that the prize is the first. And I took that to heart.
Yeah.
And I still am greedy about this stuff. There's these things that I haven't told Chris Hirsch yet.
Yeah.
I've pointed him a lot at a lot of routes that I already had equipped, and I just had not finished them. And of course, I had the gear in a lot of these things. I'm talking about the sport area at Rushmore.
Yeah.
And I'd point him out to him, and he'd just climb. Oh, that was a nice climb. That was really fun. And so I'd go to follow it now, and I fall off the fourth move and couldn't get through it anymore, So, but it was, it's that kind of thing. I really thought that doing first ascents was really important because that's the books, the English books, Royal's books, Galen later on.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like that was important.
Yeah.
Plus, I always loved coming up with most people think they're odd route names like Spider God.
Right.
And I can't remember where I got that name. But it's a funny name. You know, so.
I think a lot of the names, and you've heard me perform the cowboy poem multiple
that's cool.
times. And that's the inspiration for that is all of the names, you and Todd and Steve and, the other first ascensionists around here in Lander had such a poetic sensibility to your names that it just led me into this, wow, I have to use these names to make a greater, a comprehensive list of them that tells a story, that is a poem, know. So to me, the names mean a lot, so it's interesting that was a reason for you to go out and do these firsts, is so you can give them these fun names, and I love that taking those first ascents, these relatively small things in Vitavu, lead into these much bigger things for you. And I appreciate the way that in the book, Big Walls, you start with all these little first ascents. You talk about Todd and Renegade, which is small in stature, but much bigger in the grand scheme of things in Yosemite, in this place where these big walls are surrounding you, but this small thing means a lot. And you tell the stories of 4th of July crack and 11 Cent Moon and Vitavu, and just what they meant toward your progression into these bigger things. Where did the big dream to do the 4 walls that you talk about in Big Walls, which are El Cap, Proboscis, Mount Hooker here in Wyoming, and Half Dome? Where did the dream to do those big 4 walls originate?
I think the photos, because like the head wall looked like photos that people have climbed,
right?
But they're 60 foot long on the ground type things. A lot of times I was inspired by, if you could see a crack system, that was pretty neat. And also Vitavu was quite a neat playground to learn there, especially the flares. I really got into liking flares. I think it's one of the best places to learn crack climbing anywhere. And there were some routes I did there that were almost as hard as, say, the head wall, maybe even more technical, but it wasn't, you didn't have to worry about being scared so far off the ground. Of course, you get used to that. And then if you think about it, you can fall a lot farther safely than you can in Vitavu.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I lost the track of what we were talking about.
Did the dream of those big 4 walls originate in Vitavu?
Yeah, pretty much. We'd sit there and, again, looking at photos, and you see, well, gee, that looks like part of such and so.
Right.
Why,
So if I can climb this 40 feet, why can't I do that over and over and over?
Yeah. And we talked about going out there a lot. And then Todd all of a sudden just started climbing full time, essentially.
Right.
Making money during hunting season. And also I was doing some slideshows, not like we morphed into doing that, but I did slideshows, and sometimes, I'd get to have somebody that give me $40 or something to come see the slides. And Todd really took that to heart, and especially watching Galen Rowell's show, because he didn't have a dissolve unit, but he had 2 slide projectors. You'd push a button and this one would light up, and then this one. And they didn't dissolve. They just click, 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 click.
Right.
But it was pretty clever because you could have a stop action sequence of moves too. And that was revelatory to me. I thought, wow, that's really neat. Of course, then you had to get another slide projector,
So you were thinking in terms of like, not only just I want to do these things, but also logistically, how can we make it happen? How can we fund it? Creating these slideshows, the whole package was kind of being planned together. Is that right?
Yeah, you kind of had to, they were hand in hand if you wanted to try to make, you're not making money, you're just edging by for the most part. That's the way
Right.
it was. But now I think you can get, if you do a good job, I would think you could maybe not become wealthy, but
Yeah.
you could,
Yep.
you know, stay on the road more.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, sponsorship then was not very lucrative, really. I mean, you could buy gas and go here and there and live out of a van. But if there were some people, you know, as soon as people like Lynn Hill, I mean, I'm assuming she's monetarily better off than,
Yeah.
you know, but I always thought it was great. Anytime a climber came with, or an adventurer, I just loved to see those slideshows. And it was so inspiring to me. And plus it was a lot of fun to go to different places. And
For sure. Why these 4 walls? Why those 4 routes?
Well, the Salathe was had the pretty cracks and quite a history. And it seemed to me that Robbins and crew, who did the second ascent of the nose, I think, picked their own out, you know. And well, Chenard picked the path.
Yeah.
But it was a very clever linking of cracks. And it was just, it seemed they were so happy with that route. They didn't have to plate, like half a dozen bolts is all.
Right.
And that in those days, you know, that was the last resort.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's just what you do.
Yeah.
And it was just seemed like a great adventure. And of course it was a completely different climb with regard to technique. You know, they weren't trying to free it. They just wanted to get up the thing.
Right.
But it was the same sort of adventure, even better for them. I mean, God, can you imagine being on El Cap before anybody else?
Right.
Except maybe the nose, you know?
Yeah. Just this giant
Just like,
sea of.
wow. And they didn't know if they could get back down, which to me, in a way, was kind of not true. I mean, if they had a dozen bolts, still they could get down, you know, but it makes for a better story.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And it's also why they derided the bolts they put in. You know, they really thought it was a last resort or to rescue someone, I guess. But
Yeah. Was Royal involved in all 4 of the walls in the book?
Salathe was, Hooker. What was?
It was the direct on Half Dome
Oh yeah, that was his route.
and Proboscis. Did he?
Yes, all of those were Royal Robbins. Yeah,
Okay.
he picked out good routes.
Yeah.
The Hooker, I don't think they had any recons. You know, it's not a beautiful route line,
Right.
you know, but it's a neat alpine wall. And then the others are amazing walls. And the route he chose on Proboscis was really a cool route. In fact, that's when Todd and I went up to free climb Proboscis. It was the Royals route we thought of.
Right. And that's the Great Canadian Knife. Just
Well,
this.
What we chose was the Great Canadian Knife, which was a more modern thing. There weren't cracks
Right.
in a lot of places.
Just follow this big arete.
Yeah, and we'd get up them anyway. But they were picking up these cracks, and it was to the right too. And then while we were there, I believe, some other climbers, European climbers came, and
Yeah.
thought,
I think
well,
Spanish climbers.
yeah, and they freed a little bit of a variant on Royal's route.
Right.
It was fun.
It's
And then-
interesting. I hadn't thought of that your route on Proboscis was so much more of a modern thing, you know, and it's exactly what I was talking about on hitching your dreams onto someone else's until you kind of pick up enough speed to change grow into your own philosophies and your own ethos. And, while Royal likely never would have gone up to bolt this arête on this big wall, it's still his dream and adventure that led you into the same wall, creating your own dream and adventure.
I think so. And Galen was with us, of course, and he was very alarmed when we decided to not
Really?
go on the Robins and take this essentially blank. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't blank. I mean, for the most part, there were just several sportish parts of it.
Blank in terms of cracks, and that's what most people
And
looked for.
we ate up something to get over to something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we did a lot of aid climbing to get to a good pitch, and it worked great.
Just the modern new ideas that come out of following someone else's adventure.
And I would
that's
think
what pushes this along.
I would think that people repeat that and think it's pretty cool route.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of people doing that, but it's so striking.
Yeah.
So, and of course we did look at that, and we also looked to the dihedral to the left of it. And that is like climbing in a hothouse, except in the Arctic. It's really wet and it never gets light. And nobody would climb that, I don't think, unless, 200 years from now when the world is, all the water's gone and everything, maybe. But that was a cool route.
One of the things I see often today is this constant switching of partners. I see a lot of brands put together random teams of people to go climb a thing. And you and Todd had this 20 plus year partnership of climbing big, important things together. Why did the partnership with you and Todd work so well?
Well, first of all, I always like to say, and it was kind of true for a short time, was he was a really good belay slave.
Yeah.
Because he was still learning, and he hadn't done a whole lot outside of his family's climbing. But I think he just saw, wow, this is, first of all, it's really fun,
Yeah.
We could, at Vidavour, the Needles, or Fremont Canyon, or wherever we were, you could climb things that other people have done, learn from that, dare to try some new routes. Because sometimes you kind of have to dare yourself to do them, because you're looking around, and climbers can be pretty biting. You know, like, you're not ready to do this.
Right.
Which I always say, well, you're never not too young to do it, So what if you screw up? Even Royal put bolts in on occasion.
Sure.
But
the partnership, you and Todd, why'd it work?
Well, we both had a lot of fun, and we thought a lot of things were funny.
Yeah.
And
was there a competition there at all
between us
in the later years?
No, yeah. I'm always kind of competitive, even if it's the best person in the world. I always, even if I'm not going to go up there and say, get down from there, I have to be the first one, but I was always jealous, still am, of people. Like right now, I'm jealous of people that can lead 5'10". Although maybe I did one the other day, but it was one move. It doesn't count. But climbing is competitive, and it can be viciously so. But I think we laughed a lot, loved to go different places, seeing new things. Or Todd was even more interested in repeating hard things too.
Right.
And he was traveling quite a bit. And, Karn was just a little kid then, so I couldn't really go a lot, But that's a good thing to do is, see what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of competitiveness.
Oh, wow.
In that.
Yeah. Look at the stigma.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Talk about international bickering,
Mm-hmm.
And people have improved on it. That's what climbers are supposed to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, oh, well, Royal Robinson crew, South A doesn't count anymore, which is absurd. That was the coolest ascent it'll ever have. Mm-hmm. If they bolted the whole every 6 inches, it'd still be the coolest to do it first,
Right. And I think there are a lot of people who would say what you and Todd did on it was the coolest, and what, Hewden and Jones did on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were.
Followed by you and Todd
amazing.
Was the coolest. Mm-hmm. And it all just sort of depends on what it is we've decided we love about it. And those are things built on the accomplishments of the people who came before. Mm-hmm. We can only see so far into the future and what the next iteration of this thing looks like. Mm-hmm. We can only see so far. No one in 1970 was thinking about 515D, mm-hmm. Which Alex Megos just did the second 515D in the world. Nobody thought about that back then because that was so far ahead. But they were thinking, 13C, mm-hmm. 13D, 14A. Mm-hmm. Those things were starting to materialize a little bit. And it's, we think whatever that slightly earlier generation is the coolest. Mm-hmm. You think Royal's ascent was the coolest, and mm-hmm. some people think your ascent was the coolest. And
well, I would read these guidebooks or listen to stories or a magazine, and I can't remember that. Greg Lowe was an amazing climber, and he did a lot of things that were way ahead of the standards. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he sought them out more than he would any other line, like, oh, that looks really cool. And there's a thing he did, I might be way off on this name, but there's a route kind of over where T2 starts in El Dorado, and it might be called Clever Lever, mm-hmm. and I think they call it 512, and he just climbed it.
Right.
And people say, well, that's not so hard. Well, that was 35 years ago or something, or maybe more.
Right.
And I think Backer was the first one to repeat it. And, people of that talent, it's just really cool and inspiring. And, well, it can't be that hard. But I think he called it 510.
Sure. Yep.
So, man. And never mind Jeff, but Greg, geez, mm-hmm. he's kind of overlooked, but boy, he did some hard stuff, which was really inspiring. Yeah. Everywhere he went.
And I think we all bring these interesting, different talents to it. You write in the book that up on the Salathé, you were kind of the choreographer and Todd was the dancer. Like you could come up with these clever sequences that Todd didn't see. Mm-hmm. And then Todd was able to master them a little faster and mm-hmm. repeat them faster than you were. And I think partnerships like that need that sort of, different talents. You bring initially you brought the mentorship to it, and Todd brought he's a good belay slave, mm-hmm. And then years down the road, you're up on the Salathé and you're able to see the sequences that Todd's then able to execute. Mm-hmm. I think good partnerships have to have those radically different talents in order to work.
Yeah, and it did work. I mean, it was, like the first pitch of the the head wall.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That first little pitch.
Yep.
At that time, there wasn't a bolt there. There was a piton down low, and you had to do the crux to get. And it was kind of scary there
To get to the first pro.
Yeah, and the first actual crack, because there was a flare that kind of went over here, and then a little swooping crack over here, and it was just a couple little crimpy things that was hard. But if you fell, you'd land on your belayer and then fall past him, you know. And it was supposed to be my turn, and we'd top roped it before. And I just said, Jesus, I can't. I'm too chicken to do it right now, you know. So Todd just danced across it, and it was like such a relief.
Yeah.
The other one was fine, you know. There was really good pro on that, and maybe people laugh about that now because you wouldn't get hurt. You might land on the belayer, but it wouldn't probably even hurt. But I thought it was just terrifying in that spot, you know.
Yeah.
That's one point where I really was glad it might have been scary, but he, you know.
And having that partner to be able to admit, I'm too scared to try this right now, you know. I think that takes a certain level of comfort that you build over 15, 20 years of partnership. You know, there's, like you said, it can be fiercely competitive. So if it's a new climber, someone you're not used to being on these big dream projects with, it's a little harder to admit, I'm scared to do this right now.
Yeah, and later you might be, because that was the case. You know, there were times when I did a pretty good job of route finding and move figure and outing, but a couple of them they just fell to him, which was terrific. But I'll never forget that first part of the Salthay. It just spooked the hell out of me that morning, and I was delighted when I got to top rope it. Yeah, and I didn't fall or anything. I had before, you know, on a top rope, but that was fun, and then away we went. You know.
So one of the things I love about Big Walls, the book, and I keep bringing that up because I don't know, did Amy tell you anything about our plan with Big Walls, with the book?
I don't think so.
So maybe you can tell me a little about this story, and I'll just deviate here before I get back on track. But so Amy bought from you all of the copies of Big Walls that you had years ago. And the story I've heard is that you were in some kind of financial need. Amy had a little surplus, so she bought all the books up. And those books, I would go into the old Lucky Lane gym, and they're still sitting in boxes in there, you know. And I've always thought, wow, we should do something with these books, you know. And it's one of my favorite books of climbing adventure and big dreams and partnerships. And it occurred to me that now I've built this business that, you know, this podcast is essentially my marketing tool, and I can, you know, tell people about interesting things that are happening or that are for sale or whatever through this. And why not talk to you about this, about these adventures, and then sell people the book, you know, to help Amy out a little bit now that she could use the help, and to help the Todd Skinner Legacy Fund. So that's kind of the impetus for all of this. And I've pulled the book out and been looking through it again. And one of the things I really love about it is that it starts out by telling the stories of these smaller climbs that could be viewed, if you were just looking at the big things, as insignificant. And then it builds into these bigger things, and ultimately into you not completely seeing the whole dream through. On Half Dome, when Todd is laser focused in on this route that you've both really wanted to do, you know, that may have been your dream initially through.
Well, I campaigned that before El Cap.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing we didn't, because there are a lot more decisions to make there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I bailed, is there were people watching us all the time.
Right.
And it was just because they knew we were going up on that. And, Royal was criticized for using so many bolts on that, which was nothing compared to, well, Galen pointed out there were more bolts in that than on the nose or the Dawn wall or something.
Right.
But, every climb is different.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I just finally, and I had pressures at home.
Yeah. You had just gotten married.
Stuff like that. And it was, I just became overwhelmed.
Sure.
And I still feel bad about it. It's kind of a long time ago.
Why do you feel bad about it now?
Well, because I still feel I abandoned him there to take, the climbing would eventually go.
Yeah. But
the acrimony and, people hiking all the way up there to yell at you. And they did that on the Solitay too.
Sure.
Hang dogs. John Sherman. He was the funniest one. He was down on the street, and if it was, the wind was right, you could hear, hang dogs, hang dogs.
That doesn't surprise me at all from Sherman.
Well, he was really the one that got Todd interested in, and not so much as me. I went off on the photos that I'd seen of that. And, wow, that just looks so cool. But John had climbed the Solitay, and he said to Todd, when Todd was working on the Stigma, he said, well, geez, if you can climb that, you should go on the Solitay.
Right.
And he probably said that, because he was, ragged Todd and I anyway. I was like John. I had a big blow up with John one time. I was really mad at him one day. And I'm not mad about it anymore. I mean, it's just, and I don't know if he's still mad. I talked to him a little while ago, actually.
Yeah.
Taken aside. Here I live in my hometown, moved back, little bitty town.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any active climbers there anymore. And I get a phone call from this lady, and they just bought this decrepit hotel they're remodeling. And she said, we have some mountain climbing pictures we found in the basement. They're slides. And I don't know what to do with them. Would you like to have them? And I said, well, okay. So I got this, like, 3-ring binder, chock full of slides.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to help me here, but it was a climb of the Tarango Tower.
Oh, really?
And Rob Slater.
Yeah.
Is that it? He died on K2?
Yeah.
All right. My mind is going.
Yeah, he was partner with Randy Levitt often back then. Yeah.
And a good friend with John Sherman.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, here are all these slides. It was booked. It on the cover said something about this was the number 3rd or 2nd or 1st.
Wow.
He had thousands of slides of this, and here is just this one. Well, apparently his brother had this girl that sold the building. They were a couple. And then they broke up, and somehow he forgot these. And I said, geez, this is Rob Slater's, some of this. And I didn't know who to give it to. So I called Randy Levitt and also John Sherman and just left messages.
Yeah.
And I got responses from them and told me where to send slides for his brother. So I did. And I know he got it. He didn't reply, but John said, yeah, he got it. And that's good. And he was happy to have them. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. But in Newcastle, you're the mountain climber. We have some pictures you might like to have, And if it'd been somebody else, they might have said, oh, God.
Yeah. What's the point of these?
Yeah.
Let's pitch them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've bumped into John in Waco several times over the last few years and had some really fun, entertaining conversations with that guy.
Oh, he's fun. He's very sharp.
Yeah.
And he's a really good climber. And I had couple run-ins with him, but I've always liked John. He might not know that, but I really admire him. The coolest. I always thought when he first came up with the V grade with no limit.
Yep.
That it should be that way for everything. Well, now it is 515,
right.
whatever.
Yeah, they used to be closed-ended scales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you get to people even really got upset when they came up with 510, because 510 is numerically the same as 51.
Right.
But I can't even add, so it doesn't make any difference to me.
Oh God.
I've never balanced a checkbook. I've tried.
Oh, I'm not,
just really bad at numbers.
I'm not built for numbers.
Mm-hmm. Me neither.
Yeah.
Probably. But anyway, wherever we were. But
I think we were on Half Dome, and you're still feeling bad about it and kind of
I hate to
regretting leaving Todd up there.
Yeah. And I just
something I thought about it when I was looking through the book again last night. It occurred to me that had you not left, then Nancy would have never gotten to be part of the story. Steve Bechtel wouldn't have gotten to be part of the story. And so I think you growing a different direction and feeling like, okay, I need to go handle these things. I need to take care of these things. Those are more important to me right now. Gave Steve Bechtel the chance to go and have this adventure with Todd. And now with hindsight being 2020, we can look back and see the major importance of being able to have those adventures now that Todd is gone. That's something Steve gets to hang on to forever. And essentially that was a gift from you, because you could have stayed up there and hogged it to yourself.
Talk to Steve about this.
Yeah, it should. Steve's going to owe you something for this.
Yeah, well, I didn't think about it that time. I was just very relieved that other people stepped in.
Yeah.
Because I thought that wouldn't be as hard as it was. And then I had personal pressures that really slayed me.
Sure.
And that with the hollering and just a bunch of, and I never could understand that anyway.
Was Todd just better at like putting his head down and forging ahead no matter what?
Yeah, and I think he kind of, in a way, masochistic way, kind of enjoyed it. It's like, well, we're going to do this anyway. Why not just try to ignore it?
Sure.
But it was a good deal. It wasn't. I don't think it would be the most enjoyable route compared to others.
Right.
Just razor-shaped stuff. But and that was the Warren Harding, stick to it. Todd Skinner, stick to it.
Yeah.
On so many other projects, and before. The Renegade, man, that took a long time. And it's funny, if you're trying to climb hard, it often works out that, say it's 510, 5/8's the hardest you've ever done. You're going to try to climb a technically difficult 510, and you just work at it, like people did with clunky hiking shoes. All these things make a difference. But anyway, they finally climb it, and they find that, I bet I can do another one. And then pretty soon, that wouldn't have, you look back at it, you say, well, gee, that wasn't that hard, because a lot of it's between your ears. You're strong enough physically, you're just not believing it enough.
Yeah.
Even if you think you do, you say, I know I'm going to get this. Well, then why didn't you do it 2 weeks ago? It's not any easier, And I think most people that are trying to do hard things find that, you'll fall off, hang there, do it. doggone it, come down, pull a rope, go again, fall off, pull back up, easy. It's
Yeah.
so mental.
Yep.
And I think it's still that way. It's going to be that way forever.
Definitely is. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest parts of improving as a climber is learning how to sit within that mental space and understand it and grow into it.
And there's some things, you just climb them and it was so fun and so nice, and then you're doing a first ascent and you climb it and it was so nice, and then there are those ones that just keep slapping you.
Yeah, just the hateful
And
ones.
why? It's just crazy, and then all of a sudden you do it and
Well,
it's done.
one of your roots actually was that for me. For a lot of summers before I lived here, I would come and I would try Atomic Stetson, and it was a different move every year that slapped me down over and over and over, and I just had the hardest time mentally connecting it all together. It never felt possible because there was always one move, like I said, different moves that felt impossible to me that year. And then last summer, I thought, I'll just try it again. And all of a sudden I could just do it. I was just ready. I wasn't physically stronger than I had been in the years past. I was just ready for it.
It was kind of the same with me on that. I could climb everything easily, but there was about 2/3 of the way up or something, I would just fail.
Yeah.
It wasn't any harder. It was just in here between my ears. And one day I was up there, and there was a young couple climbing Babalu'i. And they were asking me questions. So how would you climb that? So well, maybe can I, would you belay me? And I went and climbed it and came down, and for some reason it just thought, well, that didn't look very hard.
Right.
But I'd done it 8,000 times. And so they went up and just one or the other climbed it, and they went, wow, maybe it inspired them a little bit. And then I thought, well, heck, I'm here. I might as well give this thing a whirl again. And I just climbed it. And it was kind of a letdown. And it was also disappointing because it took 39 years to do it,
Yeah.
But it's funny how those things work.
It is.
If you look up at Cerebrus, or this climb in the Needles has so many names.
And you tell the story of it in the book as well. Yeah.
And that meant so much to me. And it still does. I still climb that, and I just think I do think it's a wonderful climb. But being able to just climb that was probably the coolest thing I've ever done. And it's 5'8".
Yeah.
I can climb that every day.
40 feet tall or something.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just, I just climbed it with James like 3 or 4 days ago.
Nice.
So it was cool. It was really neat. That's the one where his shoes,
that's where his shoes were
big
poking
toes
out.
were literally sticking out. He says, I'm just going to wear my shoes from now on. His hiking shoes. Oh, that's funny.
Well, Paul, I appreciate and always have your poetic sensibility in writing about your adventures and your dreams and your successes and failures, and that's something I really appreciate about Big Walls, the book, and the people out there who are listening who haven't seen the book or haven't read the book should definitely pick it up. It's filled with these poetic stories and musings and lessons, that you've learned from routes both big and small, easy and hard. And I think that, the idea that there's something to learn from all of it, and that something 40 feet tall and 5'8" can be the coolest thing you've done when your resume includes the first free ascent of the Salathé or of Mount Hooker or Proboscis, the Great Canadian Knife. among hundreds and thousands of other things, is just such an important lesson to keep in mind. So, I appreciate you putting your words out there. I'm glad you're going to continue to put those stories out, get those stories down so that we have them. And I appreciate you sitting down today and
Oh, it's fun.
talking.
I always like talking to climbers, and it's really nice. First of all, it's a camaraderie, and oftentimes you'll learn, and they'll tell you that, wow, there's this super cool place.
Yeah, look
Yeah,
around.
and it's really good.
Make
And
sure
then
no one's
as
paying
soon as
attention.
you leave them, you go do it.
Yeah.
But
That's why you're keeping your location secret for now.
Yeah, there's a lot of, if you think about Royal Robbins too, he was very possessive about things, but if it were a friend, I probably wouldn't try to snag the route. But
Yeah.
but no, there have been instances where people did jump in, and I've pointed out a lot of routes, or they've just found them and climbed them. And you know what? It doesn't matter. There's so dang much rock out there.
Still finding it.
And I still see stuff, and I thought, man, golly, look at that. We should do that. I haven't done them yet, but
Yeah.
there they are.
You're just a climber for life no matter what.
Yeah, and you learn so much. Sometimes you learn, if there's something you have in your head, and you're also have this climb in your head, and you do it, and then all of a sudden, the other thing that has nothing to do with climbing, you figured out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Maybe it's because your brain is let go of two problems. Now there's only one. Oh, okay, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a copy of my book here for you that came out this year that is a lot like that. It's, kind of lessons you can take from climbing into the rest of your life, and where your book is, full of inspiration and hope, mine kind of points out all the excuses and doesn't let you have them. So they're different in that sense, but yeah, climbing is such a great metaphor for the rest of your life. So
yeah, my family thought, my folks I know thought it was a waste of time, but I'd do it again.
Yeah.
And these people say, well, this Salathe's been already free climbed and in better style now, and it'll be better yet. In fact, that Adam Ondra, watching that deal where he just, and I said, oh God, yeah, he's going to get to that boulder problem, and that you can get in a pod and rest, but it's a tricky little thing. And then he took that very safe fall, but it was and like Tommy too on
screaming
Donwall.
and yelling fall.
Oh yeah, but still, like, wow, yeah. I just thought all of those films were super cool. Now, I know I'm changing the subject, but when I watched the free solo, oh geez, I now just thinking about it, my stomach feels like I'm going to throw up.
I know.
And
having been on some of those pitches myself, I just can't fathom having the mental clarity, bravery, control to go up there and do what he did.
Well, that the part that is even worse for me, because the 513 crux he did, we looked at that, but we figured we could get that little blank move or two to get into the anyway, the endurance corners just below that, holy cow, I thought, oh gosh, we're coming from Vidavoo, we can do some flared laybacking. Oh man,
yeah.
Todd didn't have too much trouble with it, but I don't know if it had to be mental, because I just was, man, I fell off that 3 times. Go back down, and Alex is just resting there.
Yeah.
Just so calm.
Yeah.
And I'm just about to puke. I've watched that 3 times, and I just go, oh my God, next time I'm going to fast forward through that.
Yeah. For me, it's the slabs down low that are the scariest. They feel so insecure, and I just can't imagine climbing without a rope through there.
I went way off the first time I climbed the Free Blast, and I was just way out, and I had to climb down, and that was very, it had my attention.
Yeah.
Here's another thing. I'm just curious. Do they still have those big bashies, that big? Flattened?
Not that I know of.
They look like tin foil pie pans.
Yeah.
The bashies had been pounded so much they were literally this big.
Totally flattened out.
And maybe some others banged on them, which I don't, And I just thought, boy, this was when people were still really raging about
on the Free Blast or up higher?
On the Free Blast.
Yeah, I climbed the Free Blast in maybe early 2000s, and I don't remember seeing them.
I just wondered, and I wondered how to get them off, like take Freon up there and get them really cold and try and get a screwdriver behind. But they were so
weird,
permanent to me. I don't know. And people were, there were people upset about that, but I don't know what. There were no little slings in them or anything. They were just
pieces of metal smashed into the wall.
Really, and no worse than all the other things climbers smash into the wall.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
For sure.
So.
Well, I've got to get over and get things set up with Amy here soon. But
yeah, well.
I appreciate you sitting down and taking the time.
I'm happy to do it.
I left this conversation with Paul to go record the memorial for Amy Skinner's mother, Lucille Whistler, who was also someone who really welcomed me in and made me feel like family here. And that drove home this idea of, capturing the voices of the people that we're going to lose someday. And I thank Paul so much for sitting down and for having this conversation. It means the world to me, and hopefully I get to have more of these when I go climb with Paul over in the Needles, and I'll give those to you guys if I'm able to get them. And in the meantime, like I said, we've got Paul's Big Walls book, signed copies, a limited number of them. The link is right there in your show notes, in your pocket supercomputer. All of those proceeds go to Amy Skinner and to the Todd Skinner Legacy Fund. So check those out. If you have not yet registered for Rocktoberfest, it's this weekend. Lana and I are having climbing trivia, prizes for that. It's going to be a ton of fun. And then I'm going to have a conversation with Ashima Shiraishi around what she's doing these days. She's got some great initiatives supporting diversity in the climbing community that she's been working on that I'm excited to talk to her about. All right. I am running before Lana gets here so I can look like I've been doing things that she wants me to be doing. You guys know where to find us, powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find us on the Facebooks, the Instagrams, at Power Company Climbing. I think we're still on the Pinterest. I don't really know. I don't think Lana even knows at this point. Maybe I'll bring that up with her. Or maybe not, because I don't really want to be yelled at today. However, you cannot find us on the Twitters because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time to build power. 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 This time to build. This time.
lot of people your age, you said that like I'm only 34. But a lot of people say, well, I can't do that because I'm 34.
Yeah.
And that happened on the Salathe. These guys were, I think we came through them, and then we sat on the block, which is about 3/4 of the way up, I think. And they were saying, this one guy goes, well, yeah, you young guys. Well, I was 6 years older than he was, you know.
Right.
So I always think that kind of thing is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, I'll be 46 this year. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Be 46 this year, and I've climbed the hardest things I've ever climbed in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know when I'll slow down, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it happening in the next few years anyway.
Yeah. Well, I just reached the point where I had to get a real job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no decision.
Right.
And it's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I would like to climb a little harder, and maybe I certainly can climb harder than I'm climbing now. But even if I don't, like this 5/8 that James and I did the other day, that's the most significant climb I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I probably climbed it 50 times.
Yeah.
Maybe probably more.
Yeah.
And I like it every time. It's,
You know, it made me, when you said that, it made me think of Devil Wears Spurs. I remember when I first started sport climbing and we came back to visit Lander, I had to project Devil Wears Spurs. And I remember feeling hard and intimidating. And I remember the joy of getting to those easy last bolt sections, the tippy top, and just how awesome that was. And now it's the warm up at the
Mhm.
main wall. Every time it feels so good to do that route.
Mhm.
Maybe better than some of the projects that
Mhm.
I've worked on since.
Yeah.
It still is like one of the best routes. Period.
Some projects aren't fun at all, you know,
Not even a little bit.
and
Yeah.
and some are, you know,
Yeah.
but they are still good for you,
Yeah.
you know. And sometimes it's, you know, you think, God, I should have kept working on that, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are sometimes you're saying I shouldn't have ever started that. But on the other hand, there are times when you think, gee, well, I think in your mind it thinks, well, that wasn't so bad,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And it isn't. It's just
Yeah.
move on,
Yeah.
you know. Dang.
It's funny. Climbing is never just simple. There's so much mentally, emotionally tied into it that can change your mindset or your perspectives or
Hmm.
what you believe you can do for whatever weird reason.
Yeah. And I remember, again, going back to the black and white picture days, seeing Don Willens and Chris Bonington on this motor scooter, you know, driving all night to
Mhm.
go to Wales and climb something, or go to the Alps. And
Yeah.
those black and white adventures are just magic to me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I think, gee, I wish I could have been there to do that. But we all get to do that. It's just a
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
climb, you know.
Yeah.
And a different
Different era, yeah. Better shoes. That's the thing, you know.
Yeah.
I think of all the, you know, shoes just really make it, you know. It doesn't matter what brand it is, you know. Golly, man.
Comfort. When my feet are comfortable, when it's not the pain in my feet holding me back, that's pretty nice.
Well, I used to wear 37s, and when Amy wore hers out, or decided they were stretched out, which were 35s, I would take those because I really liked those, especially this one brand. They never made these shoes. They were just kind of, it was before 510 made 510s. They were just making the tennis shoes then.
Mm.
And it was an Oslo product, I think.
Yeah.
And I still have this pair that I did some really neat climbs in. I still think they were a really good shoe. And I still have them. They're probably, if you actually got them on, they'd tear. You know. But now I'm wearing, I think, 41 or 2s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got them here at a Climbers Festival.
Yeah.
And I haven't been climbing much, so they last better that way.
Yeah. They last longer.
Yeah, my first pairs of climbing shoes were those old Boreal lasers, the pink and black ones, and I think they were in U.S. sizes. They were size 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, the theory was if you can get your foot in it, it doesn't matter how long it takes or how bad it hurts. If you can get your foot in it, then it fits.
Mm-hmm.
And now I wear a size 9 climbing shoe.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to, I used to buy them and soak them in a bucket over, and then wear them wet.
Yep.
Because the rubber doesn't get wet. It's, and even the synthetic stuff they use now, it works. I have a pair, 4 years ago I bought some Muras, and they're the women's ones, the gray ones.
Yep.
And I always figured, I've worn a lot of women's climbing shoes, never other garments of theirs. But, okay. But I just soak them, and it seemed like the next day they were fine. You know? But at this one pair, I soaked them again when James and I were climbing, and I just didn't have the jip to put my feet in them and climb. I figured, not climbing, I don't have to have the tightest shoes in the world. They're still too tight, you know?
Yeah.
I still choose comfort.
Yeah, me too.
Pretty much any time. Wait, Paul, before you go, tell me what Amy was like as a climber when she was like at her strongest.
Oh, kind of the same. You know, when she smiles and she's happy,
Yeah.
that's the way she was. Yeah. I mean, that she has a wonderful, well, like your smile now. It's very similar.
Yeah.
And she could get really happy about not just, in fact, when she did some of the hardest climbs she ever did, I don't think she was smiling as much, you know, because it was, maybe later it was, but it was kind of a relief. I think that's true with hard projects anyway.
I think so.
But I think that was, well, that's one of the things I liked about Amy. She can really beam.
Yeah.
Although she can also go the other direction.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen her sort of kind of homicidal. But, yeah. And I've seen her also so upset she cried.
Yeah. On a route?
Yeah, after falling off for like the 20th time or something, you know.
Yeah.
But I think everybody does that if they really have a project that's a true project.
Really invested in it.
And I think everybody knows it's a mental thing.
Yeah.
The reason you can't climb it, like hard climb, there's one move that you just cannot, or sequence you can't go through, and you fall off, get right back on, and it's 5/8. You know.
Oh yeah.
I suffered from that a lot.
It's so tough.
Oh, yeah.
It's so tough.
The other day, James and I climbed a pinnacle right off the highway. It's called, Dave Rearick did the first ascent, and Bob Camps named it Dave's Dinghy. Dave's D-I-N-G-H-E-Y, the boat. And it's a really fun 5/8 up until the crux, and it's one move. And when Ren belayed me the first time on it, and I had just purchased these new boots they had. They were royal blue with red laces, Royal Robbins boots, you know.
You were fast.
Oh, man. And I still don't know at my skill there how I got through this. It's the last move to pull onto the summit. And there's a great hold here. Yeah. It's slightly overhanging. Yeah. And there's nothing there. You just have to smear your feet and stand up. And I was quite pleased to get up that thing.
Yeah.
And every time I go there, I think I've only done it 4 times in my life because I was spooked by that. And this year I've climbed it 2 out of the 4 times. And now I just think, I have these shoes that if you look online, they're $200.
Yeah.
And these were old, hard, put your feet up and stand up. And so I do. Just do it quick. Don't think about it.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's a bolt right here. You reach up and clip a bolt. I was quite chuffed the other day. I just stood up and did it. And here comes
amazing.
James with his toes sticking out,
Yeah. Could he do the move, Paul?
Oh yeah, he just climbed up it,
Yeah. He didn't have that memory associated with that move.
Mm-mm.
Right. It's true. When you do, there's hard moves on anything that you have every time you get there.
Yeah.
Devil wears spurs makes you think of the bottom every time.
Devil wears spurs is a 50-50 chance that I'm gonna send it or not send at all every time I get on it, no matter when, what point in the season, how strong I am, what else I'm climbing on.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm gonna send it or not is 50-50 every time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's your favorite climb here? No, it doesn't matter how hard or anything.
There's a lot of choices.
It's hard I know, it's really hard around here because there's so many good climbs.
I mean, I think Devil Wears Spurs is a huge contender. My last sport project was Wind and Rattlesnakes, and that one just because it was Amy's route and it was amazing. But it was hard emotionally. That was a tough route.
Yeah.
I had to work at it for quite a while to believe in myself, to get through each, because it was pretty sustained. There was never a point where I was like, okay, it's done. Jug call to the finish. No. There was no jug call to the finish.
See, that'd be in my top 3, probably.
I think it's probably one of the best routes I've climbed it while in Vancouver.
Yeah, that was really good.
Why do you ask? What were you going to say?
I don't know. I just was curious,
Wind and Rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else.
I can't say what the other 2 would be because they're so good, but Wind and Rattlesnakes popped into my head.
Yeah. It was phenomenal, Paul. Phenomenal.
I really love Hang Fire at Fossil Hill.
Did you ever climb that route, Paul?
I don't know. I forget.
12A.
So long.
Left of the wall where Cubans hit the floor, and those are.
I don't know.
It's a good one. Just a fun boulder problem, great stance. Boulder problem, great stance. Boulder problem, great stance. All the way up. Really fun.
I will tell you, every year, Lavaca Pelagrosa. That route
That is
is
such
just
a great
perfect.
route. Yeah.
That is a good one.
It is the most perfect, happy sport route that ever was.
It's perfect. And
That's
what's
good.
That 10A, I think. Is it Red Rider?
Red Rider,
Red
yeah.
Rider's really fun too. It's not far from here.
About a month ago, a friend and I climbed this, I think it was 5-7 or something. Anyway, it was really cold. It wasn't supposed to be cold, and the wind came up in the afternoon. It was just freezing. And it was all of a sudden 5-7 with between the decimal point and the 7 there was a 1. God, it felt hard.
Yeah.
And these young climbers used to climb with this one guy's dad show up, and they said, "Oh, we climbed Buckshot Eyes and a Purple Heart." I said, "Man, that was hard. That is not 510." And Craig, my climbing partner, and he said, "Yeah, that's hard." And I said, "Well, what is it? What's that crack face thing on Bell Tower?" "Oh." And they were looking at me, and I said, "Well," I can't remember what I said. And I asked something. I said, "Well, what is its name again?" And they said, "Well, it's your route." And that happens to me all the time anymore.
Yeah.
I forget, I said, "That's a really neat name."
Yeah, that's great.
Now I realize
That's a
it's
good name.
Tom Waits. I get a lot
Yeah.
of Tom Waits.
I love Tom Waits.
I do too.
Chris does.
Yeah, as soon as you said it, I knew it was Tom Waits.
Yeah.
You know what route I would really like to do though someday that feels classic is it Blue Moon or Harvest Moon? I forget. the
Saints.
12A at Saints.
Blue Moon.
Blue Moon.
Mm.
Did you do Blue Moon, Paul?
I don't.
Oh, you must have warmed up on it.
I don't know. I've climbed a lot of things up there. I really am kind of scary. I'm losing my mind.
Losing some memory.
So I'll have
Yeah.
to keep track of.
Yeah. So you guys have to keep a track.
We'll keep track for you. That's okay.
It's kind of scary. This is a kind of run out. You
Is
know,
it
you don't
scary?
ever get pro. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
I think Deb thought I was just not listening to her, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And then we went to these doctors a couple times. They said, "Well, there's nothing we can do,"
Yeah.
you know.
So you
So-
just have to.
I just, you know, I'll
Feel
just be
great.
sitting on the bench feeding birds, I guess.
Yeah, I do that anyway, and I'm in
Yeah.
my early 30s, so
Yeah.
I do that by choice.
With a naughty lap dog that barks at all
Yeah,
these
you've got.
people.
Oh, is that right?